My name is Daniel, technical artist here at Keoken. Done a lot of streams, and since the beginning I enjoyed helping it, setting everything up. I help with our current setup.
So for people that don't know, what does a technical artist do?
Very simply put, I am kind of like the bridge between programming and art. So if an artist wants to make something that's technically not possible yet, I'm the person who is supposed to program it, make it work in a way that it's feasible to run in a game. And if our game runs very badly, that's on me. I have to optimize all the art and all the particle effects.
Basically in charge of the bugs as well.
As well, yes. And then specifically the visual bug. Something might not work and it looks weird, or some textures get corrupted, or some drivers are not working nicely with our game, and then I have to figure out what shader is doing it, and yeah, that.
And now you're also making the streams.
Yes, also helping with the streams.
How did that come to be?
We started off a long time ago. I think it was 6-7 years ago, with having a Kickstarter, and at some point we also started doing streams, and that was a lot of fun. It was very janky. We did not have all the appropriate gear. It was just a webcam, just the mic of that webcam. But it garnered a little bit of attention. So slowly we started increasing our budget for the streams. We added better cameras, got better webcams. And so, yeah, at the moment, we have a way bigger setup.
Yeah.
Something that's not only for Keoken, but also for Hunchback, who is also in the same office as us. So what we do, we make streams, we play our own game, we promote other people sometime, like we played Celeste, and that's just because it's enjoyable, people like watching it, and for us as a company, it's fun to make.
Yeah, because we're currently sitting in the studio.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's quite a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Let's say you're any devs that want to start making streams. What do you think is the most important thing to focus on? What should they get? What should they think about?
I think the best starting point is at least one decent camera, maybe two if you have the budget. Start off with a simple handycam that's usable with a computer, because not all the cameras are created equal. Some might not have an interface to work with a PC. I think most these days will. It depends on what type of streams do you want to make. Are you doing it personally, like one person sitting behind a computer and showing some dev things? Then you probably have enough with one cam and a good mic. But if you are with multiple people, you're going to need a table like we're sitting on, with two chairs and a more podcasty feel, where you talk about things a lot more. And if you have even more people playing a game, watching a movie, commenting on that, as if giving the viewer the feeling that you're also viewing with them, you might want to have a more direct face contact, as if you're sitting in a cinema. So we have 4 cinema seats here. That gives the player, not the player, because we work with players all day, the viewer, a bit more of an idea that you're looking with them, and then you can look into the camera if you're talking to them. So then you would want more chairs.
And what kind of content do you feel works well for developers to promote their game with? What are things they should be focusing on, and what are things you have noticed doesn't work as well?
If you want to engage with players, many players also like to see how things are made. You have all these programs on Discovery, how it's made. And I think that works really well to promote your own game. You can show some behind the scenes and people can engage with that. So in that sense, you can start very well with just the camera, just showing in-engine stuff. You can just talk about it, like in a podcast, that works as well. I think those are good starting points for promotion of your own game.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to just go over some of the products you have here that are in the studio and see what kind of gear you're using.
We have these Rode pod mics. They're stands. Those are, they're ideal. We use them together with a Rodecaster Pro, and it has all presets specifically for these mics. So that makes it very easy to set up. You don't have to do any equalizing or anything. It's just Rode knows exactly what these mics are, and their mixer will work perfectly with it.
And then you also need headphones, because you might not think about that, but if you're even doing a conversation like this, it's really convenient to have the headphones, right?
Exactly. So what we chose are the DT770 Pro from Biodynamics. It works really well because they're closed. So it's nice to have closed headphones, so that if you put them on, you don't hear as much from the outside world. And as well, if you have like direct feedback from your mic, so you hear yourself talking, it helps if they're closed as well, because you actually hear how you sound instead of hearing your own voice reverberate through the room and everything.
Yeah, I think that people probably need to keep in mind that if you use a USB mic, could be that you don't get instant feedback. And if you don't get instant feedback, it's going to be really, really, really tough listening to yourself. So make sure that you only do that with instant feedback, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because if there's a slightest delay, you start stuttering and it's really hard to say anything.
Talk. You will hear yourself really late.
Yeah.
It's like if you're watching a stream of yourself, like with that stream delay, you just can't talk anymore.
It's so weird. But yeah, I think the main thing you want to focus on is that they're closed. You have open as well. That's nice if you just are on your own. It's not that bad, and you can not have your own voice over the headset. That's fine. You don't always need that. But if you're talking with multiple people and your mixer might not support sending a specific channel to or not to certain headphones. Yeah. So for example, we want the people to hear each other through the headphones, but that means they will also hear themselves. Yeah. So we need that instant feedback.
You obviously need cameras, right?
Yeah. So we have 2 or 3 Sony ZV-1s, I think. They support direct HDMI out, and they're just USB charged. They're just small handy cams, like they're not crazy DSLRs. You don't need that for most things.
The thing with a DSLR for streaming is like you've got a lens, and with a DSLR, if you use the lens really long for a long period, you can burn through the lens. Yeah. So if you use a DSLR camera, you can do that, but if you stream for a couple hours, you might break the lens in a sense. So it's not a good idea to use like a DSLR camera. Keep that in mind if you want to get a camera for your stream.
And especially since Paul wanted to do everything in 4K, which it's a challenge because that takes quite a lot of processing power. But these cameras support it, 4K, 25 FPS. So everything is in 25 FPS. And we try to keep it that way, and we try to set the ISO to auto, so that's automatic, but we set a fixed frame rate and shutter time. Yeah. So every frame is actually getting the full 25 of the camera. So 1/25 of the second is just one frame, and that's the actual shutter time. And that way you have the clearest picture. Most of the light gets through to the actual sensor. You don't get noise from the ISO. That was trying to compensate.
Yeah, because if you put ISO really high, you will see like a lot of noise around it. It looks like if you have like these old Nokia phones that could make pictures. If you make a picture with that, you see a lot of that noise, and that's like what you're gonna get if you have your ISO up.
Exactly. So that's not what we want. Set the lowest ISO you can, or just set it to auto and make sure that the shutter speed is the longest you can get it.
And you're making use of a dual PC setup for it.
For a short time we had one PC, but every time we wanted to play a game, it was kind of a hassle. That was because we have one person sitting behind the desk managing the stream, but then if on the same PC somebody needs to play a game, that management is not possible. So we added a second PC for actually doing stuff on, like playing a game, or opening the engine editor or whatever. Yeah,
even if you use a controller, like you can't use the mouse at the same time.
So if you want to have a separate management, definitely you need a second PC. But even if you don't, it can be beneficial because it frees up processing power of the other PC. You might have less stuttering or whatever. Yeah. Even though most GPUs, like graphics cards these days, have dedicated chips for video encoding and decoding. Still, the best way is to have a separate PC because you might run out of RAM or for some weird reason.
Yeah, you can stream on one PC, but it's like if you have the budget and you have the space.
And you might get a very cheap streaming PC, so where you actually run OBS or Streamlabs or whatever you use. As long as it, for example, has an Intel processor with QuickSync on it, you could use QuickSync for the stream encoding, which is very efficient, and you probably don't need a huge, heavy PC. You could probably
it's kind of like if you would stream just your webcam.
Yeah.
it will be like taking as much power from the PC. So like
Exactly.
if you have like a good PC and a lesser good PC, use the best PC for the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
the
that
game,
takes the most power.
Yeah, exactly. The game is going to benefit more from that power than your stream probably will.
You also have a monitor that is facing us right now. Like we are the ones like presenting the stream.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, besides, of course, it's nice to hear yourself through the headset and the mics. It's also nice to see yourself so you can present yourself nicely and you don't slouch or hang over or you're half out of screen or anything. You can position yourself, you can see what the stream is like, especially in a setup like this where you're not the person streaming.
Yeah.
Like, you're not behind the wheel in that sense. And
you have to trust that person.
Yeah, you have to trust that person, and this way you still have feedback of what you're doing, and if it looks right, because that's a big part of a stream is how it looks, of course.
And I saw that you're also making use of the Elgato Stream Deck.
We use it for switching scenes. For example, when we're at the podcast setup like right now, we might want to show a trailer, so that can pop up. We want to switch the whole scene and play the trailer, or we can place markers for Twitch, so you can always find what you were doing or like a notable moment.
Yeah, and then you can use that for social media.
Exactly. And you can very easily, share everything you've made.
And do you guys like download the streams back, or do you also record the streams locally on the PC?
We record them locally on our PC. There's no reason to stream it and then download it again.
And then you will have it in 4K as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the full resolution file at the high bit rate, and we can always upload edits or do some editing in-house and then upload a shorter cut to YouTube or for shorts or whatever, just as archival reasons, but also practical.
If an indie developer wants to start, or a developer, I mean, they can be as big, and haven't started yet, but if they want to start out with doing streams themselves and start creating content, what kind of budget do you think somebody needs to start out?
That really depends. If you have 3 cameras, that's going to be like maybe 200-300 per camera. But if you only need one, you could buy one for 200. If you don't need 4K, which is 4K is very nice, but it's really not necessary for most things. You could probably get a little bit below that with cameras. These are expensive headsets. They're about 150 each.
But I guess you could also just use
in-ears. You can use in-ears. So you can go from spending 200-300 on your complete setup and be okay. That's going to be fine. For most purposes, that's going to be okay. Or you can spend 2,000 euros and have a good mixer that's not in software, like an actual physical board like we have here, because that can be a little bit more expensive. That one costs, I think, about 500 or 700. You can make it as expensive as you really want yourself.
Yeah. If the stream looks better, you think that would influence the amount of people that will come to the stream?
Yes, but I think a big part of what makes a stream look good is not necessarily how much you've spent on your camera. If you look at how good smartphone cameras are these days, you can probably do a stream with your phone. Yeah. And it's going to look amazing if you set it up nicely. So you have good lighting, try to have natural lighting if you can. If you have like a big window, it's not a bad idea to have that light your face. And if you don't, you could get a ring light or some overhead lights like bigger flat LED panels or something like that that can light your face. It can be smart to put them a little bit lower than you would like, so they light up your chin and you don't have like big or droopy eyes. That stuff is always very hard to hide. And unless you can see a lot of streamers, they put on a lot of makeup to hide everything, but it's way easier to use good lighting. Don't make it too white. It gives you a little bit of a washed out look sometimes, so you can make it a bit warmer. In my opinion, that will make it look more appealing to people to watch, to make it more.
And you can do that with cheap lights as well.
Yeah, you
just have to be more creative.
Exactly. You can put down any lamp. It will work. It will give light.
As long as you make sure that it's not directly on your face.
Yeah. You don't want it to you don't want to put a flashlight behind the camera and shine into your face.
But you can use like a sheet, or you can use a wall to bounce it off, and it will work.
So a white wall or a white sheet of paper where you shine the light on will reflect a lot of light back without being too bright or introducing bright spots in for example, glasses or eyes too much. Yeah.
So what do you think that streaming has brought to Keoken?
Lately, of course, it's brought us personally a lot of fun. Back when we started with the company, we had a Kickstarter and we needed to raise money in our Kickstarter. We were streaming. And then at some point, a huge streamer from Germany, his name is Gronk, he saw us streaming, and then all his fans came over to our stream as well. And that kind of pulled us over the edge of our Kickstarter. So in that sense, that was amazing that because we were so approachable as a developer, people could see us and could see that we were excited about the game we were making, and that excited them. And then with the other streamer, we had a lot of interaction. And yeah, so that has brought us, I think, you could maybe even say this whole company, because I think without that, it would have been a lot harder. Fans that have been there since the beginning and are still fans of the games we make now, I can't express how much we need those people.
So it's a good way to make your company known even though people don't know you yet.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of being a company, people can see that it's just a bunch of humans.
Yeah.
Actually having fun or explaining things to them. It makes you approachable, it makes you human, it fosters some kind of relationship that's other than just commercial.
And it makes people have a good feeling about a game.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we also, with our Keoken account, we jump into chat with other streamers, just streamers, game streamers specifically, that play our game. And then we say, oh, how are you enjoying the game? And you can see that they like the fact that we as a developer do that, because it's not standard apparently. It's not normal yet. But for us, it feels very natural. And we can give tips or whatever, or say, oh, have you found this Easter egg? And then they can go looking for it. And yeah, that type of interaction is a lot of fun. And it brings us a lot of goodwill. Sometimes you see them stuck, you're like, oh, come on, just go there. It's just there. You just have to go.
But sometimes we get stuck on silly things.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't want to, as a developer, you know every little thing. You can speed run the game in like no time.
Have you tried speed running?
We've tried speed
What's your
running
best
the
time?
game. I think our best time for the whole game is about 4.5 hours, but that's like skipping stuff as well. And that's Deliver Mars. But there's been speedrunners that have done it, I think even faster than that, like 2 hours. And they skip like half of all levels, and they go in the rover, and then they drive up some rocks backwards, and they jump out, and then they go into another part of the level where you're not supposed to be yet. And then they pretty much skip 90% of the level, which is amazing to see as well. Because that's also on Twitch, for example.
Yeah.
You see all these speedrunners, and they have the timings on the side, and then you see them break your game completely, and you're like, oh, well, okay. It's fun, but it's like, okay, yeah, well.
It's a different kind of fun.
Yeah, but it's also things we're not going to fix. It doesn't happen naturally. You don't. If you follow the game a little bit, even
it's
you
not
won't.
a bug. It's a feature.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're not fixing those things necessarily. Only if it completely crashes your game, for example, then gotta take it out. But if you can skip a part of the level by being very ingenious, go for it. That's a lot of fun to watch.
Is there something that you want to say to developers that want to start streaming?
It's a lot of fun to do. You might even explain some things to yourself about how you make your game, in the sense that you're not only making your game, but you're also immediately figuring out how to make your game good to be able to stream. Instead of just having your game, you also want people watching your game that are not playing to be able to engage with it. So they can say, oh, what if you do this, or what if you do that, and like puzzles. And it works best if you kind of design a little bit around that. And that's easiest if you do it yourself. So if you stream yourself, you have an idea of how it is to interact with an audience for a streamer. And so to, for example, put some downtime in your game sometimes where the streamer can interact with their audience, put some mystery in your game that will have the viewers questioning things and being a bit active. I know Rocket League is a completely different game than what we're making. There is no mystery there, of course. No. It's more like soccer. You're just watching a game.
You're not going to interact about like the game per se unless somebody scores like a nice goal or something.
Yeah, then you're like, wow, cool. But that's no interaction with the game for the viewer in that sense. And it's nice if you have like a story game where some intrigue or mystery where the viewer can think about how the story might evolve. And they can argue in the chat what's going on with the streamer and those types of things. So I think that also helps you just create a better game in general. Because even for somebody playing on their own, your game might be at least more intriguing.
Well, thank you so much for talking about the studio and taking us on your journey.
Of course, thank you for being here. My pleasure.